You're now watching Way Back Wednesday, sponsored by Davenport Auto Park, the ride of your life. And also sponsored by Flores Glass, serving the area since 1977 with residential and commercial work.
Way Back Wednesday, I'm Randy Adcox. Hope you had a nice Thanksgiving. I sure did. Eat too much turkey as always, but it was great to get together with family and friends and really just take a moment to be thankful for all the blessings that we've all received. So I hope you and your family had a very nice Thanksgiving and looking forward to a very happy holiday season coming ahead. Tonight's show is kind of a two-part deal. I got a call after last week's show. My buddy Eric put a bug in my ear about a business that I frankly had never heard of, didn't know ever existed, but I found myself very intrigued by the possibility of learning about the railroad salvage company, or should I say railroad salvage companies, because there were more than one in fact. So we'll get into that in just a minute. But I found myself this week too also going through some, I've got a bunch of books I've acquired over the years, and one of which we've talked about several times on the show, the Rocky Mount Record. If you've not seen this book, you can go by the public library. They've got it on the shelf up there. But it's a great book to look back to a bunch of old pictures of Rocky Mount back in the early 1900s. And so every now and again I pull it out and just kind of thumb through it and just look and refresh my mind about some things that are in there. And so I did that this week, and I found, half a dozen or so pictures and articles that I wanted to share with you tonight. And I was actually looking for a picture of, if you remember from last week's show, we talked about the Burnett building. And I said, somewhere there's got to be a picture of that building. And so I went looking for a picture of that. Did not find it, by the way. I'm still looking. But in any case, I stumbled across some interesting pictures and articles from the Rocky Mount Record. So we're going to share some of those with you. And I'm going to talk about a couple people, businessmen from Rocky Mount, or early times in the early 1900s, I should say, that were really instrumental in helping put Rocky Mount on the map. So anyway, with all that being said, let's jump right into it, Lee. If you would put up our first picture, item number one. I found this picture and article in the Rocky Mount Record, and it makes a reference to Battle in Lancaster. And you see the subtitle there, the largest and most complete furniture store in eastern North Carolina. And so I have to say, when I first saw this, I said, I don't remember this before. I've looked through this book a bunch of times, but for some reason, this particular business just didn't register with me. And so I found myself reading the article. It was 2 or 3 pages that talked about Battle in Lancaster, two very young, very energetic Rocky Mount businessman who started this furniture company. This picture in the article you see here is actually from 1910. And this building, by the way, is still standing. I'll show you what it looks like later, in a few minutes, in fact. But this was one of the early furniture stores in Rocky Mount. They actually got started in 1909. They carried all sorts of household furnishings, including musical instruments, pianos, for example. And so that kind of piqued my curiosity because, I just didn't associate a piano with being in a furniture store. But I guess, if you think about it, it makes a very lovely piece of furniture, particularly if you've got a very nice piano and a very nice room to put it in. So anyway, this was the article, and I'm not going to read it. It's kind of long. It was like 2 or 3 pages that talked about the business and the two gentlemen. It was 2 gentlemen, of course, Mr. Battle, Mr. Lancaster, that started the business. Let's move on, Lee. Item number 2 is just another picture from the inside of the store. And again, this is from 1910. And I'll tell you in a minute where you can go if you want to go take a look at this building, because it is still standing. The thing that threw me, and what I didn't realize when I first saw this, was that we've talked about this very business before by another name, and I didn't realize that it was the same business. But in 1909, when these 2 gentlemen got together and started this business, it was in fact known as Battle Lancaster Furniture Company. And they were, by all accounts, very successful very early. But at some point, and I'm not exactly sure why, maybe it was to pursue other interests, or maybe there was some disagreement between the two gentlemen. I really don't know. All I know is that Mr. Battle left. He left the partnership, and Mr. Lancaster took the business over. Item number 3, if you would, Lee, before I get too far along here. This is a picture of Mr. Gaston Battle and Mr. W.R. Lancaster. And as you can see, this was in 1910, and you can tell these guys are not very old. They were, I'm not sure, probably in their 30s by the time this business got off the ground, maybe late 30s. But like I said, they had a very booming business for a number of years. And when I mentioned a while ago that they sold pianos, I just, for some reason, that just didn't click with me. Those of you that remember Moss Piano, downtown Rocky Mount, to me, when I was a kid growing up, if you wanted anything to do with a piano, that's where you went to Moss Piano Company. And in later years, there were a couple of places around town that also sold piano, W.C. Reed Music Company, for example. They were out at Tarrytown Mall for a while. And there were a couple of places you could get pianos, but I just didn't really associate a piano business being within a furniture store. But these two gentlemen did. In fact, item number 4, if you would, Lee, this ad appeared in a newspaper all the way in Greensboro, North Carolina. It was the North Carolina Christian Advocate from June the 25th of 1914. This ad appeared, and it was an advertisement for the Weaver piano, grand and upright. And you see there on the left is an illustration of a baby grand piano, and on the right is the upright piano. But this was a listing of dealers in North Carolina. This company was actually from York, Pennsylvania, the Weaver Piano Company. But they had stores all over the country, several in North Carolina, in fact. And down near the bottom of the list, highlighted there in yellow, is the W.R. Lancaster Furniture Company. So this was 1914. So as I said, 1909, Mr. Gaston Battle and Mr. W.R. Lancaster started Battle and Lancaster Furniture Company. But by 1914, Mr. Battle had moved on for whatever reason, pursuing other interests, I would imagine. But in any case, Mr. Lancaster, W.R. Lancaster, took over the business as sole proprietor of the business. And amongst the other things that he sold in addition to furniture and pianos was phonographs. And for many years, Mr. W.R. Lancaster had a very successful business in the location we'll show you here momentarily where the building is. It still stands, as I said. Number 5, if you would, Lee. As I said, in addition to furniture and household furnishings, they also sold pianos and phonographs. This ad is really kind of grainy. I apologize for the quality. It's not very great. But this appeared in the Rocky Mount Telegram January the 15th of 1920. January 15, 1920, this ad appeared. And it was an advertisement that says, the headline reads, "Get the Broadway hits first on Pathe," that's P-A-T-H-E, or maybe it's pronounced Pathe. Looks like there's an accent on the E, so we'll say Pathe. Phonograph records. Well, that kind of threw me for a loop because I'd never heard that brand, never heard that word, in fact. Didn't know anything about the Pathe phonograph records. So I went digging to see what I could find about that. But you see at the bottom of the page on there, the bottom of the ad, it does show W.R. Lancaster Furniture Company, 107 to 109 North Washington Street. And so in any case, Mr. Lancaster was now selling these phonographs. Now, if you're like me, I'm thinking this far back, why didn't they sell Victrola? Well, as it turns out, the Pathe brand name, or Pathe, if you will, because I think the company was started in France, if I'm not mistaken. I seem to recall reading something about it being the gentleman who started was a Frenchman. But in any case, this company was actually started in 1898. The Victrola didn't come into existence until 1906. So the Pathe phonograph record literally preceded the Victrola by 8 years, actually. So then I went in search of, I wanted to see what one looked like. So I found one after much digging. Lead number 6, if you would. This is a picture of a Pathe phonograph from 1898. And you'll notice it's a cylindrical record, if you will, there. And a sound horn or tube there. And so this is what it looked like. And, I had forgotten this, but when I was reading the history on the Pathe phonograph and how this thing came into being, I stumbled across another little hidden jewel of history. That is the fact that well before Pathé invented this machine, and well before Victrola invented their machine, it was none other than Thomas Alva Edison who invented the cylindrical phonograph in 1877, a full 21 years before these other gentlemen came into play with their device. So we'll give Thomas Edison credit for inventing the cylindrical record player and making audio sounds available to be retrieved from a cylindrical object. And of course, later it turned into flat records. But this is what it looked like in 1898, and this was the Pathé, if you will, phonograph machine. Okay, let's move on, Lee. Sometimes when I'm looking for information and research, I just stumble across an article that just gives me a chuckle. And so I was searching for Mr. W.R. Lancaster and Mr. Battle's business, and I stumbled across this ad from August the 30th, 1912. It's a really short article. I'll read it to you. It says, Mr. T.H. Edwards has taken over the Enfield Cafe. The purchase was made this week from Battle and Lancaster of Rocky Mount, who held a mortgage on the fixtures. Gus Cottus, the former proprietor, left by the light of the moon sometime last week. We understand the revenue officers are after him for selling beer without government license. And Gus, not being very well acquainted with the revenue officers, decided to move rather than bother with them. So it seems Mr. Cottus was selling bootleg beer out of his cafe in Enfield, and the revenue men got word of it, and Mr. Cottus decided to vacate the premises before the revenue officer come and took him off to the pokey. Okay, I mentioned that I had a picture of the location for Battle and Lancaster and later Mr. W.R. Lancaster's Furniture Company, and here it is right here. This is 107 to 109 North Washington Street, and if you look to your right there, that is the end of the building where May and Gorham Drug Store was located, of course. And you can see the double entrance there. And if you go by there, the words furniture is actually embedded in the sidewalk out in front of that entrance right there. But this was a location of, like I said, Battle and Lancaster initially in 1909. And then by 1914, Mr. W.R. Lancaster had taken over the business himself and was running it as a sole proprietorship. But that's where it was, 107 and 109 North Washington Street. Okay, as I said, I was browsing through the Rocky Mount record book, and as I was turning pages, I stumbled across a couple things that I guess I had seen before, because I've been through this book multiple times. I just really enjoyed going through it and flipping the pages and looking at the old pictures and reading the stories that accompany the pictures. But I hadn't done that in some time, and so looking through it earlier this week, I stumbled across these pictures I'm sharing tonight, and one of them was for a company that was in business in Rocky Mount in 1910 called the Abram Book Company. Number 9, if you would, Lee, for our viewers. The Abram Book Company, and I'm just going to read a little bit of this here. It says, Rocky Mount people can indeed point with pride to the Abram Book Company in neatness, inviting appearance, tasteful and artistic arrangement of the interior, as well as a skillful business insight evidenced by the show windows and the quality and amount of stock carried. This store does not have an equal in its class in North Carolina. It is really a pleasure for anyone who appreciates the artistic in life to pay the store of Mr. Abram a visit. For not only will they find any kind of literature desired, but his stock consists of pictures of all descriptions, novelties, picture frames, brass and leather goods, and he advertises that he can sell anything to a businessman in the way of modern office conveniences. He does also a wholesale business in wrapping paper and paper bags, and in fact is a large out-of-town business in all the lines. Mr. Abram established his business in the fall of 1909 in the Planters Bank building, but his business grew steadily until he required larger quarters, and for the first of the present year he moved into his present large store in the Jenkins building on Tarboro Street. So this is a picture of the interior of Abram's Book Company, and I'll show you in a minute. This building also is still standing, and it actually has a current tenant in it, so we'll get to that in just a minute. The Rocky Mount City Directory from 1912 had this listing, number 9, if you will, I'm sorry, number 10, Lee, And this is just a little blip advertisement that was into, as I said, the 1912 Rocky Mount City Directory. And you see that advertises books, stationery, school supplies, office supplies, pictures, frames, and novelties. The Abram Book Company at 118 Tarboro Street. Okay, so 118 Tarboro Street. I knew that had to be somewhere that I would be familiar to if I saw a picture of it. So I did a Google search on the address, 118 Tarboro Street, and lo and behold, I found this picture. So Lee, if you would, number 11 is a picture of 118 Tarboro Street. And currently, if you zoom in there, it's that brick building right in the center with a little round thing behind the bush there. And this is actually a restaurant now. I think it's, golly, I forget now. I made a note to write it down, and I forgot it. It's a little bistro restaurant, not cafeteria, but a little coffee shop kind of thing there. Kind of catacombs across from the Larima Coffee Shop, which is in the old First National Bank building. So as you can see, you're headed east on Tarboro Street there, headed toward 5 Points. In fact, you can see the old May and Gorham drugstore in the background there, as well as the old post office there. But there on the left-hand side, 118 Tarboro Street was the location for the Abram Book Company in 1910. You know, it's amazing that there's so many of these old buildings that are still standing. It's also very sad that so many of the old buildings that used to be all over downtown Rocky Mount, and indeed up and down Church Street, Franklin Street, and other streets in that vicinity have been torn down. But we still have a lot of old buildings that are well over 100 years old, and this is certainly one of them here. I see by the clock it's time for our first commercial break. So Lee, bring it back to me if you would. When we come back from the break, we're going to show you some more pictures from the Rocky Mount Record, and then we're going to take a look at this very interesting, at least to me it was, look back at the Railroad Salvage Company and all its many versions over the years. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more Way Back Wednesday.
Today, having the right healthcare plan tailored to your specific needs is vital to your peace of mind. The question is not if you will need the coverage, but when. And when that time comes, you want to be prepared. With the rising cost of medication, medical procedures, and doctor visits, you should know which is the right insurance plan for you. From life insurance, affordable health care, to Medicare, there are a lot of insurance options available, and choosing a plan can be overwhelming. Having Gus Tullis as your insurance professional on your side will give you peace of mind, because you will know you are covered with the insurance that meets your needs.
Hello, my name is Gus Tullis of Gus Tullis Insurance, and I've been helping people with their insurance needs for well over 20 years. Call me today. I'll answer any question you have. 252-937-6913. Looking forward to hearing from you.
I'm Daniel Moss, owner of Cornerstone Funeral Home, and I'd like to invite you and your family to give our family an opportunity to serve you in your time of need. And we offer a full line of funeral services, everything from visitations to graveside services to cremations on site with a live crematory, as well as a banquet hall to meet the catering needs of our families that we serve. We offer catering service. We offer refreshments prior to visitations and services of our family. And we want to invite you to come and experience the difference here at Cornerstone Funeral Home.
There's a main nerve that leaves your back that goes into your hip and goes down your leg. It's called the sciatic nerve. A back injury can put pressure on that nerve, causing pain, numbness, tingling. Chiropractors can actually help that. At the Hammer Chiropractic Center on Sunset, we know exactly what to do. We have very good relationships with the doctors in Rocky Mount. We'd like to co-manage people's care. Some medications may help us do our jobs, and our jobs may help their medications work better.
We're back. You know, I had the sad occasion this week. Many of you probably knew Butch Smith from over in Battleboro. He was a longtime member of the Battleboro Baptist Church in later years. He carried his membership over to the Avalon Baptist Church. Butch was a phenomenal person. I'm not saying that because he was kin to me. He was really a good guy. He was my first cousin, in fact. Butch passed away earlier this week, and while we all miss him terribly already, he left a legacy that will carry on for many years to come. And during the visitation, I happened to run into a good family friend of the Adcox family, Mr. Parker Phillips. I know Parker watches the show, so hey Parker, how you doing? But while we were waiting to spend a few minutes and visit with Butch's family, we were talking about the show, and Parker mentioned that we had a show some time ago where we talked about the local bands and orchestras that were from Rocky Mount, and certainly in the 1930s and 40s were very popular. And one of the bands that was local was headed up and in fact led by Henry Milgram from Brattleboro. And so if you remember from that show, Bob Merritt was the one that first told me this story. He said that for a while, Henry Milgram, when he was directing his band in this orchestra, he took on the stage name of Count von Milgram. And so anyway, I thought that was pretty interesting, but it was, of course, everyone wondered why. Where did he get that from? Why did he pick up the name of Count von Milgram? And so when I was looking through the Rocky Mount record earlier this week, I stumbled across an ad for a business, and I had to stop and do a double take, and I immediately put the connection together. So without further ado, Lee, if you would, put up number 12. In 1910, there was a business in Rocky Mount run by a gentleman named Moritz, M-O-R-I-T-Z, Moritz von Milgram. Moritz von Milgram. And in the 1910 Rocky Mount record showed this picture from 1910. There's a little write-up here about Mr. Milgram, and I'll read it briefly. It says, "This jewelry store is scarcely yet 1 year old, but so efficient has been its management, coupled with such square dealings and fair and courteous treatment of the public, that has already won an enviable patronage among the highest class of the trade, and is regarded as one of the leading jewelry stores in this section of the state. The stock of solid gold and silverware, cut glass, and everything in the jewelry line carried by this store is one of the most complete and up-to-date to be found anywhere in a city the size of Rocky Mount. Mr. von Milgram also does a considerable jewelry manufacturing business, making a specialty of remodeling old jewelry, something that is not done elsewhere this side of Baltimore. The proprietor of the store, Mr. von Milgram, is one of the most expert and reliable jewelers in the city, thoroughly conversant with every detail of the business and possessing splendid business qualities. He's a native of Dresden, the capital of Saxony, Germany." Remember that name, Dresden, from World War II? It was heavily bombed in World War II. Anyway, having been born there September 22nd, 1884, Mr. von Milgram is a descendant of an old and noble German house. His father, D.L. von Milgram, having been a major in the Prussian army with a brilliant record in the Austrian-Prussian War of 1866. Mr. von Milgram was educated at the University of Dresden and at the Imperial Military School in Vienna. He came to America, landing in New York September 2nd, 1901. From New York, he went to Washington, North Carolina, embarking there in the jewelry business, being a partner in the Washington Jewelry Company. He moved to Windsor, North Carolina in 1904, conducting a jewelry business also in that town. He came to Rocky Mount in 1906, accepting a position with the Woodruff Jewelry Store in this city as an optometrist and manager. He went into business for himself, opening his store, present store, April 1st of 1910. So this is a picture of Moritz von Milgram. And Lee, if you would, let's go on to item number 13, because the article is carried over on this next page. But this is a picture inside the store. And again, this is from the Rocky Mount record of 1910. And the article goes on to say, "For general beauty, neatness, and artistic arrangement of stock and sales room, his store is not surpassed in the state. Mr. Milgram is, in addition, a graduate optometrist licensed by the state of North Carolina and conducts a general optical business, keeping a full supply of the highest class goods in that line. He is regarded as a thoroughly competent and reliable eye specialist and is widely consulted and patronized." Mr. von Milgram was married June 15, 1909 to Ms. Mary Hester Marriott, beautiful and accomplished daughter of Dr. H.B. Marriott of Brattleboro. One of the most prominent and influential citizens of this section of the state. Mr. Von Milgram is not only popular in business circles, but he and Ms. Von Milgram have made quite a valuable and welcome addition to the social life of the city. So, obviously, Henry Milgram, Henry Count Von Milgram, got his Count Von from this gentleman, who I'm assuming is either his grandfather or possibly an uncle. I'm not sure exactly. I've not researched the family line to find out how Henry Milgram from Brattleboro was related to this gentleman, Mr. Moritz Von Milgram. But I do know that the Milgram family and the Marriott family certainly were intermingled here by marriage. And Bob Marriott at Brattleboro had mentioned that to me in a prior conversation he and I had had. So anyway, I thought it was interesting that Henry Milgram, Henry Count Von Milgram, the orchestra leader, has a connection to this gentleman here from Germany, who was by the name of Moritz Von Milgram. How about that? Okay, I mentioned that the building where his store was located is still standing. The location is 146 South Main Street. I don't think there's anything in that space now. And if you're familiar with the way numbering is on Main Street, the even number addresses are on the west side of Main Street, and the odd numbered addresses are on the east side. I'll say that backwards. West side is even numbers, east side is odd numbers. So 146 South Main Street is on the Nash County side, or the west side of Main Street. And Lee, if you would put up item number 14, this is a picture of the building. And once we get up on the screen, I'll show you something too about this building, because not only is this a very old section of Rocky Mount, or Main Street I should say, there's a very old business. What happened? We lost our feed there. Here we go. There on the right, you see there's J.R. Harper's bookstore. I think it's J.C. Harper. Anyway, on the right-hand side is the old bookstore building. That was at one time a bank too, by the way. And to the left was where Mr. Moritz Von Milgram's jewelry store / optometrist office was located in 1910. So again, we've got a building here that's well over 100 years old, still standing. And as much as I'm glad to see that, as I said earlier, it's just a shame that so many of these buildings got torn down around town and do some beautiful homes up and down Church Street and Franklin Street. I'll show you one in a minute. That was demolished many, many years ago. As an afterthought, I found an ad in the Rocky Mount City Directory from 1912 or so that gave the address for Moritz Von Milgram as 420 Florida Avenue. So I went looking, because Florida Avenue no longer exists in Rocky Mount. It's been gone many, many years. But this is a map from 1957. What you're seeing there in red, that long red line running diagonally, is Church Street. Just to the right of that, of course, you see the dotted line indicating the railroad tracks and Main Street there, just adjacent to the railroad tracks. And almost dead center of the building, of the picture, there's a little yellow highlighted area. That is Florida Avenue. Well, Florida Avenue. And that's where Mr. Moritz Von Milgram lived in 1910. Now, the interesting thing about this is, if you know where Hammond Street runs into Church Street, and you know where Chester Street is, if you're headed east on Hammond Street, and you go one block down and turn left and go one block, you'll hit Chester Street. Chester Street used to come all the way up to Church Street, and then there's a park there now. It doesn't come all the way across. But in any case, the residence of Mr. Moritz Von Milgram was generally in the location of where the Senior Citizens Center is now, if you remember where that is. Kind of catty-corners across from the Rocky Mount Fire Museum and the old Summerlin Funeral Home. Kind of catty-corners across from that, where the Senior Citizens Center is. That's roughly where Florida Avenue was. It ran parallel to Main Street, of course. And so anyway, that I just thought it was neat that he could literally walk out his house, his front door, and within a few steps he'd be at his business. And I just never realized that there were homes that close to Main Street, but I guess back in the early 1900s there were, in fact, and that was on I'm not sure how many homes were on Florida. It was a very short street. You see, it was just 2 blocks long there. But at 420 Florida Avenue was Mr. Milgram's home. Okay, let's move on, Lee. Number 15, you know, we've shown this picture before, and I never had a clue where this building was. This is, of course, the Pepsi-Cola bottling plant, and the article from the Rocky Mount Record talks about the Rocky Mount bottling plant here, and again, this is from 1910. Most of these pictures we're showing tonight from the Rocky Mount Record all date to 1910, 1911, somewhere along there. One or two may go a year or two older, 1908, 1909. But anyway, this picture is one that I've seen several copies of it, different, different books and so forth. But I never knew exactly where it was. And so when I found this, and I realized that this is from 1910 listing in the Rocky Mount Record, I immediately went and did a search because I've got a 1908, 1909 Rocky Mount City directory. So I went and pulled that up, and lo and behold, I found the listing for the Pepsi-Cola Bottling Company in 1908/1909, because in those 2 years they had one city directory that was compiled for both years. It didn't come out till 1909, but it included business listings from 1908 and 1909. So anyway, Lee, if you would put up item number 16, and you see here, here's the listing. This is the location for the Pepsi-Cola bottling plant in 1908, 1909. As you see, the address there is on the corner of Marigold and Washington Street, okay? Marigold and Washington Street. You also see just beneath that, it says the Punchinello Bottling Company at 120 Marigold Street, okay? And if you remember from last week's show, we were talking about the Womack Electronics being at, I think it was 105 Marigold Street, right down near Main Street, there by the city lunch and so forth. So anyway, the Pepsi-Cola Bottling Company in 1908, 1909 was in a very close proximity to that building, 120 Marigold Street. So anyway, I just thought it was interesting that we knew about the Pepsi-Cola bottling plant being there in the old Comasco building on the corner of Hill Street and Washington Street. That was later the Rocky Mount Popcorn Company. There was a laundromat company in there for a period of time. The building is now empty. But I didn't realize that the Pepsi-Cola Bottling Company was, in fact, at one time there, as you see in this address listing, on the corner of Marigold and Washington Street. And of course, later years, they moved. I think in 1933 or 34 is where that building on the corner of Marigold Street, not Marigold, but Hill Street and Washington Street was built. And so they apparently moved up from where they were on Marigold and Washington down the street to the corner of Washington and Hill Street. Okay. I mentioned a moment ago about some beautiful old homes that used to be in Rocky Mount. The first one come to mind would be the Battle home on Sunset Avenue. This home, I honestly can't say I don't have any recollection of this. Maybe some of you do. This was the residence of Mr. W.H. Newell. Mr. Newell was a very prominent businessman in the early 1900s, and again, this particular picture dates from 1910, and it's a picture of his home. And I didn't know anything about Mr. Newell, certainly didn't know anything about his home. My guess is this building was probably torn down before I came along. I certainly don't have any recollection of it. But you can tell it was a very grand home. It's just everything about this home just speaks of someone who's very prominent, very well-to-do, very distinguished. But I did a little research on Mr. Newell, and as it turns out, Mr. Newell himself was a very prominent businessman in the early 1900s in Rocky Mount. Number 18, Lee. This ad appeared in the Rocky Mount Telegram August the 11th of 1919. And you see it's Rocky Mount Homestead and Loan Association. Let us enroll you and help you to own a home. Rocky Mount Insurance and Realty Company. And you see at the bottom there, the principals are Thomas H. Battle, president. By the way, it's the same Thomas H. Battle, affiliated with Rocky Mount Mills. And then, of course, Mr. W.H. Newell was the vice president. And you see there also, it says this was located on the second floor of the National Bank of Rocky Mount. And so I believe this was the bank that was located on Main Street beside the fire department, there down from City Hall and so forth. But in any case, Mr. Newell was the vice president of that bank. So when I went looking to find out exactly where his residence was, this fine home, the address was listed as 321 South Franklin Street. That's what the Rocky Mount City Directory for 1908, 1909 listed his address as 321 South Franklin Street. So I went looking to see what was currently at 321 South Franklin Street, and lo and behold, this is what I found. Today, 321 South Franklin Street is occupied, at least partly, by Rocky Mount City Hall. And so, it got me thinking, we've talked in the past about some of the really elegant homes that were up and down Church Street and Franklin Street, Sunset Avenue. I mentioned the Hyman Battle home a minute ago, which was, of course, the Mr. Hackney home originally. But in any case, there were so many of these grand homes in Rocky Mount over the years, and it's just a shame. I understand Mac Haven is now empty again. The last people who went in and tried to make a go of it were trying to use it to offer special events, host events, and so forth. And I understand that didn't pan out, so now Mac Haven is empty again. And I shudder to think that if somebody doesn't go in there and find something worthwhile to do with Mac Haven, that it could be the next Rocky Mount icon, if you will, to go the way of the wrecking ball. And that's just so heartbreaking to me to think about something like that could happen. But sadly, it's a real possibility. And I see by the clock on the wall, it's time for our next commercial break. So Lee, bring it back to me. When we come back from the break, we're going to talk about when Eric called me last night and he said, when you were talking about the Womack Electronics being down there on Marigold Street, he said, I have a recollection of going into a building or a business called the Railroad Salvage Company. And he said, I don't know a lot about it, but I remember being down there on Marigold Street. I said, well, let me see what I can find. So I went digging and found some interesting things about the many versions or renditions of the Railroad Salvage Company. When we come out from the break, we'll share that with you, show you some pictures. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more Way Back Wednesday.
Today, having the right healthcare plan tailored to your specific needs is vital to your peace of mind. The question is not if you will need the coverage, but when. And when that time comes, you want to be prepared. With the rising cost of medication, medical procedures, and doctor visits, you should know which is the right insurance plan for you. From life insurance, affordable health care, to Medicare, there are a lot of insurance options available, and choosing a plan can be overwhelming. Having Gus Tullis as your insurance professional on your side will give you peace of mind, because you will know you are covered with the insurance that meets your needs.
Hello, my name is Gus Tullis of Gus Tullis Insurance, and I've been helping people with their insurance needs for well over 20 years. Call me today. I'll answer any question you have. 252-937-6913. Looking forward to hearing from you.
I'm Daniel Moss, owner of Cornerstone Funeral Home, and I'd like to invite you and your family to give our family an opportunity to serve you in your time of need. And we offer a full line of funeral services, everything from visitations to graveside services to cremations on site with a live crematory, as well as a banquet hall to meet the catering needs of our families that we serve. We offer catering service. We offer refreshments prior to visitations and services of our family. And we want to invite you to come and experience the difference here at Cornerstone Funeral Home.
There's a main nerve that leaves your back that goes into your hip and goes down your leg. It's called the sciatic nerve. A back injury can put pressure on that nerve, causing pain, numbness, tingling. Chiropractors can actually help that. At the Hammer Chiropractic Center on Sunset, we know exactly what to do. We have very good relationships with the doctors in Rocky Mount. We like to co-manage people's care. Some medications may help us do our jobs, and our jobs may help their medications work better.
about the railroad salvage companies in Rocky Mount, and I say companies because there were more than one. And I can't say I have any recollection of there ever being a railroad salvage company. But you know, if you think about it, during the time of the Emerson shops and the hiatus of the railroad industry in Rocky Mount, there was tremendous buying power there within the railroad community. Not only were they buying for 2,000 plus employees, they were buying for passengers on trains, they were buying spare parts for work on trains, and they were buying tools. And when the railroad went shopping, they spent big bucks. And as such, they got deals. You know, they got deals on everything they purchased, whether it be lumber or steel or fabric or food. And so I guess it was a natural progression for someone in the railroad business around here to say, hey, we got some extra stuff here that we bought and got extra inventory or didn't need or whatever. Why don't we open up the shop and let's sell it? We'll call it the Railroad Salvage Company, and we'll sell some of this excess stuff that we don't need or that we're overstocked on. I don't know exactly how it came together, but I can envision something along those lines. And so when I went digging, when I'm looking for something like this, I try to go back as far as I can. And quite often I'll start back in like 1880, for example, and I'll look in the newspapers.com website. I'll do a search for, in this case, railroad salvage. And so if I don't find anything, I'll come forward, 1890, and I'll come forward again if I don't find anything. And so I did that, and the first listing that I found for anything that referenced the Railroad Salvage Company, and keep in mind, not always does a business get itself listed in a newspaper article or ad. Not always, at least not initially. So it's entirely possible that there was a version or a existing business of the Railroad Salvage Company prior to this listing that I found, the first listing I was able to find. But that being said, the first listing I found for anything referencing railroad salvage was in May of 1945. The Rocky Mount Telegram had this ad, if you would, lead number 20, and it talks about just a bunch of different items that are for sale, and it's furniture, and I was just really surprised at the number of things that were listed for sale here. And so we'll give it a minute to get item number 20 up on the screen for us, and we'll share some of this with you. But there was an ad that was headlined "Moving," and so I'm not sure, it doesn't say whether it was a business or whatever, but this gentleman, Mr. Guy Waller, can we get that up? There we go. Again, this was May 21st, 1945. This ad appeared, and the very top says, "Moving from Cobb Foxhole Warehouse. These giveaway prices will prevail tomorrow only." And it goes on to list new furniture, baby high chairs, California redwood clothes closet, a knee-hole desk, a walnut bedroom suit, clothes hamper, living room suit, unpainted breakfast room chairs, wicker settee, upholstered chair, very nice upholstered chair and ottoman, walnut Chesterfield occasional tables, $5 and up, store shelves, many other items, new, used, and railroad salvage goods. You will profit by taking advantage of these liberal offers. So again, this is not specifically an ad for a store called Railroad Salvage, but it kind of paints a picture that there was at least someone in the railroad industry that had access to some of this property or some of these goods that had been acquired by the railroad, and some enterprising person said, hey, this stuff is still good, it's still brand new in many cases, we can sell this stuff. And so it appears that that's how the railroad salvage business got born. Okay, let's move on. Number 21, Lee. April 21st, 1948, this ad appeared, "Salvage warehouse to open in city. A railroad salvage warehouse will open for business on Howard Street Alley at 9 o'clock Friday morning. Mrs. E.T. Coley, manager, announced today. The manager said that salvage, unclaimed, and surplus merchandise would be on sale. All merchandise is new," Ms. Coley said. Now, a couple things about this ad. You'll notice it says it will open on Howard Street, okay? So, again, I saw multiple references for railroad salvage businesses at multiple locations over a period of 25 or 30 years in Rocky Mount. So we'll talk about some of the different locations where they were in a moment. But this one here, April of 1948, announces that Mrs. Coley is opening her salvage railroad warehouse on Howard Street. Okay, let's move on then. Lead number 22, August the 26th of 1948. This ad appeared, and it says apartment-sized electric stove, metal filing cabinets, mahogany chest of drawers, deep freezer. By the way, a 13.5 cubic foot deep freezer was $379 in 1948. That was big bucks then. I'm telling you, that was big bucks. And when I saw that, my first thought was the old episode of Andy Griffith where Aunt Bee's freezer goes out. You remember that episode? And she tells Andy to get Goober or somebody to come look at it. And Andy tells Aunt Bee, call the man, Aunt Bee. Just call the man. Call the man. The freezer quits. Anyway, that's what I thought about when I saw this ad. Call the man, Aunt Bee. But you see, they're a railroad salvage warehouse company just behind Roscoe Griffin's shoe store. Well, guess what? Just behind Roscoe Griffin's shoe store was Howard Street. So this was apparently still being run by Mrs. Coley. And so this is the first time it's actually listed as Railroad Salvage Warehouse Company. Okay, so now it's an official business located on Howard Street behind the Roscoe Griffin shoe store, of course, which was on Main Street. Okay, let's move on, Lee. Number 23, November the 4th, 1949, this ad appeared in the Rocky Mount Telegram, and it says, save money on groceries and furniture at Railroad Salvage Warehouse Company. Okay, now this really kind of threw me for a loop here because, you know, I could kind of imagine that there would be some extra stuff that the railroad had acquired, whatever, they decided to get rid of it and sell it or whatever. But I never realized that there was groceries in the picture too, until I saw this ad anyway. And it lists some of the items here for sale. It starts off with hide-a-bed, sofa bed, dining room suite, chest of drawers, bathtubs, cold heat roller, bedroom suite, gas and electric ranges, and then it goes on the list: self-rising flour, Del Monte Hunts and Sacramento peaches, 1 pound can of pink tuna, sardines and oil, K-Row syrup, Cheerios, Kix and Wheaties cereal, Bisquick biscuit mix, Hostess paper napkins, baby oil, V8 juice, Fleecy White, half a gallon. I'm guessing that's milk, maybe, I'm not sure. Black-eyed peas, baby limas, pinto, and navy beans, 10 cents a pound. All these items, including all these groceries, were available at the Railroad Salvage Warehouse Company on Howard Street behind Roscoe Griffin's shoes. Again, this is 1949 at this time, and this is still being run, I'm assuming, by Mrs. Coley, because I've not seen or reference anyone else being in charge of this business. So from 1948, when she first got started, 1949, she apparently is still running the business. Let's fast forward a bit, number 24, if you would, Lee. August 15th, 1952, this ad appeared in the Rocky Mount Telegram. And again, it's listed as Railroad Salvage Warehouse Company. There you go. And you see the address there, 105 Marigold Street. Okay? So by 1952, the Railroad Salvage Warehouse Company, by the way, that's the same name that they have on their old Howard Street in 1949, Railroad Salvage Warehouse Company, but now they've relocated to 105 Marigold Street, which is, again, the area that Eric mentioned that he remembered going to with his mother down there in the general vicinity of the city lunch in that area where we talked last week about Womack Electronics being. But this ad appeared August of 1952. Of course, August is tobacco season around here. And so this ad is specifically targeting tobacco farmers. And it says, welcome to farmers of Eastern North Carolina. The high dollar in tobacco is at the Rocky Mount Tobacco Market, and the high value for your dollar is at the Railroad Salvage Warehouse Company. Furniture, groceries, meats, and produce. So now they've gone from selling furniture and household furnishings to groceries, meats, and produce. Okay, fast forward, number 25, Lee, April 24th, 1953. The warehouse is booming. The Rocky Mount Railroad Salvage Warehouse is just going bonkers, it looks like here. This ad appeared, as I said, April 24th, 1953, and it said, look at what's happened at Railroad Salvage. Look what happened. We have a new meat market down here at the Railroad Salvage. Our meat and prices are certain to please our customers, so come in and see our new market and new low prices. And you see they list steaks, chuck roast, ground beef, hams, homemade sausage, beef brisket. Down below they list vegetables, potatoes, salads, green cabbage, tomatoes, sweet potatoes. Then at the bottom, produce, sugar, cans of chili con carne, waffle syrup, K-Rose syrup, devil's food cake. And you see the address, 105 Marigold Street, at the very bottom of the ad down there. So this place is booming. I mean, apparently it's whoever's running. I don't know if it's still Ms. Coley or not, or someone's taking it over. Still got the same name as it had when Ms. Coley was running over on Howard Street behind the Roscoe Griffin shoe store. But by all accounts, things are booming. Number 26, Lee, November the 1st, 1956. This headline was a little bit of a threw me for a loop here, because now it says Railroad Salvage to open in city Friday morning. And it goes on to say, it was announced this morning, today, that Railroad Salvage Company Incorporated of Rocky Mount, located at 143 South Washington Street, will open for business Friday morning, November 2nd. Owners and operators of the new local business will be Mary F. Coley, remember Miss Coley? Virginia O. Whaley, Elbert T. Coley, and M.P. Whaley Jr., all of Rocky Mount. The business will serve as an outlet for all types of railroad salvage, including groceries, items of furniture, and other materials. Until further notice, the business will open at 9 a.m. until 5:30 p.m. Thursday, Friday, and Saturday of each week. An invitation to visit the new business on its opening day has been extended to the public. So, I'm not quite sure why the need to change the name, but apparently they did in 1956 from the Railroad Salvage Warehouse to just the Railroad Salvage Company. Fast forward again, 1957, September 26th, Lee, item number 27, if you would. This ad appeared in the Rocky Mount Telegram, and you see there's a wide variety. There you go. They're selling now books. They got Christmas wrapping paper, games, puzzles, ironing boards and covers, bookcases, bedroom suites, table lamps. They just expanded into a whole new realm of business here. The address, however, 143 South Washington Street. So obviously they relocate. Well, that's the same location. I'm sorry, I just backed up to the previous ad. That was the listing a moment ago where they had moved or opened up for the first time, apparently, at this location, at 143 South Washington Street. So let's move on then, Lee. Item number 28, December 21st, 1959. I'm not sure how to interpret this, but it looks like they're going out of business. It says, this is it, all we're liquidating. Railroad Salvage Company, entire stock, furniture, groceries, fixtures must go. Now on sale, entire stock / to go. And it lists all sorts of things here in this ad. And it says a couple times, everything must go now, big savings. So apparently they decided to go out of business. Keep in mind, this is December 21st, 1959. This is the first announcement I found that said we're going out of business. We're closing up shop. We're selling everything. Big deal. Okay. All right. Again, December 1959. Move on. Lead number 29. February the 2nd, 1961. The Railroad Salvage Company is still in business at 143 South Washington Street, selling mackerel, lunch meat, corn, fruit cocktail, catsup, Rice Krispies, flour, lard. They're still in business. Okay, fast forward again, lead number 30, Rocky Mount Telegram ad, March 4th, 1967. The Railroad Salvage Company is now located at 206 Falls Road. They got weekend specials. You can buy zippers, you can buy lace material, you can buy upholstery material, you can buy ribbons, motor oil, transmission oil, but the Railroad Salvage Company is now at 206 Falls Road. Okay. It looked like Miss Coley was connected with the Railroad Salvage Company for a number of years. Whether she was in it at the very end, I do not know. And I don't even know whether the 206 Falls Road address was the same people that had it at 143 South Washington Street and prior to that at Howard Street. So I don't know. We're almost out of time. Real quickly, Lee, put up item number 31. This is a picture that was taken by Telegram staff photographer Susan Bynum. And it's a neat old picture. It's actually not that old, from 1979. But this was the first year that Rocky Mount had a Railroad Appreciation Week. And they did it 2 years in a row, 1979 and 1980. And I just thought it was neat that in 1979, there's a listing in an ad I found for a railroad salvage company at 106 Northwest Main Street, which would appear in this picture if you could, get to it, if you could see it, I mean. But anyway, I just thought it was interesting that there were several locations for the for the railroad salvage company. Apparently, at least a couple different owners, I'm guessing. But in any case, it looks like we're run slam out of time. Lee, bring it back to me. Folks, that's going to wrap it up for us tonight. Thanks so much for tuning in. Hope you learned something you didn't know before. Have a great week. Take care of yourselves. Be kind to one another. We'll see you next week with more Way Back Wednesday. Good night.